Hi there, welcome to this devotion. Now, I've worked in the building industry most of my life, and we're a simple bunch. You give us drawings, what we must build, and we build it off the drawing. No imagination, no time for daydreaming, no philosophizing or anything like that. We just build what we're told to build. So, when I hear a good analogy, it's something that really sticks to me. I was listening to a sermon series the other day on Psalm 23 and came across this analogy that fell into this category that I just can't seem to forget about. It's so powerful. And the series on the psalm was finishing up when the preacher shared that many years ago he heard a sermon that an old Scottish shepherd that was also a preacher that he was delivering. This old shepherd said that when summer was drawing to an end, in Scotland you took your dogs, your sheepdogs, and you went into the hills to collect the sheep and bring them to pastures close to home to ride out winter. And most of the Scottish shepherds they use border collies to help round up the sheep. And the dogs are directed by the shepherd in a series of whistles and commands, and it's actually quite impressive to watch. Anyway, the preacher shepherd said once the sheep were gathered, the shepherd turns around and walks towards the pastures that he wants to go. The sheep follows the shepherd, and bringing up the rear are the dogs. Now, in Psalm 23, that was written by King David, he refers to God as the shepherd, and himself, and ultimately you and I, as the sheep. He also refers to God as the provider and protector, our guide and our sustainer. Now, a poem that has been encouraging followers of God for thousands of years. And the poem speaks from the point of view of the sheep, of the flock, so to say, and ends off with these words quite beautifully. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my house, of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And this old Scottish preacher said that when his sheep and his dogs followed him, the dogs were like goodness and mercy that follow us. Because as a shepherd is walking in the direction that he wants the flock to go, the odd sheep would want to turn around and go back to the pastures that they just left and just remembered. Without the shepherd instructing or even realizing it, the collies would bring those sheep back into the flock. A little bit further on, a group of 3 or 4 would get together and try and veer off to go back to the good old pastures they knew, and the collies would just bring them back into the direction of the flock again. And this old preacher shepherd said that if life were ideal and he could start again, he would name those 2 dogs of his goodness and mercy. And he says because that is what keeps the flock in the direction that the shepherd and our God wants us to go. We go off track, sometimes the hardship in life, and we are reminded by God's goodness that we must be part of the herd, a part of the flock, in which direction to go. And God's goodness, remember, are those blessings we receive that we do not deserve. And whenever we pause long enough and just remember the amazing goodness that comes from God, we find that our direction, our intention, and our priorities are redirected into the direction that God wants us to go. And if goodness is getting what we don't deserve, then mercy is not getting what we do deserve. And when we sit down and we remember and think about how we mess up and how we actually deserve to get punished and rebuked, and we get forgiven by love and by mercy and by nothing we've earned. Again, we can't help ourselves but be redirected in the way that God wants us to go. So these 2 shepherds or 2 collie dogs are like goodness and mercy, redirecting us in the way that God wants us to go. So my hope for you is that the goodness of God and the mercy of God will always be your guide. And I really pray that you may always find goodness and always find mercy when you look back in your life, and that the Spirit will use your recognizing goodness and mercy as to walk in the way that God wants you to walk. Till we meet again, God bless.